Thank you. All right. First, one word of warning. I will be mentioning suicide ideation. So those of you, particularly those of you online, if that is an issue, please consider this a little heads up or warning. And I also, if I end up crying, it's no big deal. It is what it is. As Brandon said, I am David Ness. I am the founder and the co-coordinator of the New Media Art Program. So what does that mean? It means that I am the guy who is the mad scientist, something I happily embrace. Because my field is really an intersection of the arts, the sciences, and anything really that is experimental and so forth. So tonight I wanted to talk about my mental issues that I had in 2020 and how through that I sort of found a new body of work and how I came through it with my work itself. And so I have been an artist all my life. Unlike Donna, I actually knew what I wanted to do when I was a little kid. I drew all the time. And I always was the kid who was always making art and always playing with anything that they could get their hands on. So the interesting thing is I probably was also dealing with mental health my entire life. I did not know this until my late 20s and my 30s. And it was actually, for some kind of ironic, in that in my 30s, I moved here to Flagstaff to be the coordinator of the Foundations program, the first year program at NAU. And that is a dream job. I mean, I was 1% of the population. I was teaching art. That is what I wanted to do. But mental health doesn't care. And it came anyways. And I would be facing that. And I often would find myself depressed and anxious and so forth. And when I moved here, I was finally able to see a therapist. I got a diagnosis of anxiety, I got a diagnosis of depression, and handled them, at least I thought. Then 2020 came. And I don't know if you all remember, but there was a pandemic, and we all had to deal with it in our own ways. There was isolation, there was issues of course, being ill and potentially losing friends and family. And there was just an overall layer of anxiety I felt. I think we all felt it probably. I had a little bit of a problem. I tended, in my moments of isolation, to doom scroll, like many people. And in one of my doom scrolling phases, I happened to come across a video by Legal Eagle covering an issue from MXR, another YouTuber, who was doing a response video. MXR had used a video piece from Junkin Media. Junkin Media is a corporation that produces short video for makers and YouTubers, and they then ask for royalties and so forth. Well, MXR didn't do that, and it became a huge issue. Something triggered in me. I'd recently done a series of work in which I had actually utilized Confederate monuments, as you see one here on the right, on your right. What I had been doing was I was taking Confederate monuments, combining it with 10 years of hate crime data to really express the true legacy and the true history of these things, because a lot of these statues were ordered out of catalogs during the Reconstruction era to reinforce very repressive ideals. And it's something that I really was passionate about. I grew up in Texas, and so Confederate monuments was around. The history of the Confederacy was totally different, maybe, than what it really was. And so I had a sort of a skewed view, and I kind of wanted to sort of realize what that was and sort of work through it myself. The thing is once you sort of think about, oh my gosh, maybe I utilized digital imagery in my work. I utilized digital 3D scans often, and I would get them from open source libraries, or I would get them from royalty-free licenses online. I would purchase them. Well, I used one. I used one for that particular Robert E. Lee statue. It was a 3D scan from New Orleans of the Robert E. Lee from Lee Circle. And I had used it because it was a Creative Commons license. It was shared. I didn't realize that Creative Commons, which is the sort of the copyleft, which is the counterpart to the copyright idea, had other aspects to it. And one of those aspects is non-commercial. Well, I had used it, I had created some work, and I literally had a piece in hand. And at that point, I discovered that this piece had non-commercial and so forth. But what was I to do? I had already started the piece. I had made this new work, and I had started building. And so I immediately began to sink into massive depression. I would call friends and family. Poor friends and family got to hear every little aspect of any potential harm that could come to me. I was thinking that people would come find me and ruin me. I finally proved that I was a fraud. As many academics can tell you, we probably all have a little bit of imposter syndrome in our lives. But so I knew it. I mean, I looked for this long enough and I found it, because as I said, you look for something long enough, you will find it. And so I really got bad. I mean, I sunk to the bottom. And sometimes, as I've talked with my therapist, we've said that sometimes you do have to hit the bottom before you can really kind of come out of it. I thought I'd hit the bottom previously, not like this. And something different had happened. And I didn't know what to do. But something was still moving. My work was still being done, and I was still doing some things around. And through this, I ended up getting permission to utilize the file. But it had destroyed me. It had ruined me. I was no longer interested in this body of work. I thought, what am I doing? I may not be the right voice to even speak about this. And so my work utilizes a technique known as 3D glitch. And 3D glitching typically is a way of manipulating a digital file mathematically, sometimes in Microsoft Excel, the most exciting art tool ever. Or sometimes, like on the Buffalo there, I had actually manipulated the program to edit the file in a different way. And so what is going on is I am essentially moving vertices. So 3D models are made up of vertices and face definitions. And my early work really focused on those vertices. Those vertices are the intersections of all the little triangles that make up your form. And so I would push these forms by adding new data, maybe manipulating things, maybe even removing stuff, and then letting the machine kind of rationalize what I had just done. I saw this as a collaboration between myself and the computer. And for years, this is what I did. I had a mastery of a trick, I felt. I felt that I was able to sort of make these little shiny objects that just were very interesting. And as an artist and as an academic, I needed to define myself. And I really was one of the first artists to really work in 3D printing. I was part of the 3D print show in London. I was part of many exhibitions around the world and throughout the country about 3D printing. In that, I was always interested in about the media, and sort of glitching was my way of sort of rationalize my understanding of is my media the digital file? Is it the 3D print, or is it something else? And so as I sort of worked on these forms, I became interested in the idea of data, because I was just pushing and pulling and moving things around randomly. I wanted to find a way that I could utilize the data, the pieces that move my models around, that edit my and create the glitching, and connect that directly to the meaning or the form or the look of the piece. What you see before you is on the far left is a protein made from Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. Because I could understand that I could translate data to data, it was just numbers. I was able to start going in different fields. I was in biology, I was doing music. I'm not a musician. Heck, I even thought music was a two-dimensional ray. It's not. I learned that one pretty quickly. On the other two pieces, those are actually self-portraits. I wanted to find a new way to sort of create a portrait. Those portraits are actually my Fitbit data, my social media data, and my DNA. Printed at the microscopic level, and then coated with stem cells, and then tagged, originally going to be tagged with my own DNA. Time and whatnot sort of prevented that. And so this is where I was. This is what I was making when I started to shift over to the Robert E. Lee pieces, because I felt like I had something to say. But now, I didn't know what I was going to do, and I was kind of lost. And what was interesting is, in this period, I began to sort of think about myself. I mean, obviously, I was turning inwards a lot. There was a lot of mental health. I was really turning inwards. I was reading a ton of stuff. And I was really exploring what this really was, what I was dealing with. And I have these skills. I have these skills of manipulating data, taking things. And what you're looking at now are 3D scans of my own head, combined with CDC data on mental health. These are all different self-portraits. One is depression, one's anxiety, and one is OCD, the one that's changing color. That paint has actually changed because of the heat of the thing in front of it. But this is where I started sort of mining things, and I found that, you know, really, if I look back at my work, and I know a lot of artists do this, but I began to understand that everything I had done was a self-portrait in many ways, and I finally have acknowledged it and said, you know what, I don't need to do what's cool. I don't need to be that innovator. And I found something that I was really, truly passionate about. This has consumed my work now. And I have a new exhibition coming up in 2023 that will deal primarily with mental health. But it's also going to introduce things that I haven't dealt with a long time. I'm known as the 3D print guy, and I'm fully aware of that. Heck, in Flagstaff, I'm known as the tortoise repairman because of some projects I've done. But with this discovery, I found that I'm able to talk about things in different media. I'm now looking at things of robotics, light-controlled pieces, all these medias that I had sort of abandoned when I found 3D printing in 2008 or so, I forget exactly when. But I'm now returning to some older media. Heck, I'm even making a giant teddy bear for my project. So I'm really exploring different areas, and I've really sort of found that this has become my niche. And it's not the technical that I thought I would be defined by, but it's the conceptual and the ideas and the idea of mental health. And so this is where I am now. I'm in process. These are the 3 newest pieces out of the studio. I have several works that deal with, like I said, with robotics and lights. But I see myself now as one of the big proponents of mental health. And it's something that I deeply care about, and it's something that I want to express. I want to make a safe space in my work, in my exhibitions, for people to feel safe to talk about it. Because we don't enough. And it should be talked. And you should talk to your friends and family. And if they don't respond, maybe it's time to get new friends and family. But it's important, you know, and as an educator, one of the things that I definitely do see is that my students, my younger generations, are much more open about it. And it's time maybe for some of us old people to actually listen to them. Because they're much more open and much more honest. And it impresses me every day. So if you have any problems, please reach out. Somebody cares. Somebody cares. And that's all I can say is please take care of yourselves. Thanks.
All right. That was a great talk, David.
Thanks.
I really appreciate it. It takes a lot of courage to come up and share so much. And you know, you obviously share yourself and all your work. So you had some experience.
Yeah,
but
a little bit.
This is great. In some of our previous conversations,
Yep.
you talked about how you were making the shiny objects.
Yep.
You were chasing the 3D glitching. You looked at it like, this is really cool. Mm-hmm. But then there's some introspection that kind of helped you to say, well, I really want to make something that's meaningful to me, and I want to share something that has a deeper meaning. Yeah. So this has been a process, obviously.
Yeah.
For the artists who are in the audience, for home watching or watch the video in the future, is there something you can share about how to look for finding meaning in your art as opposed to the chasing the shiny, or even how to know the difference between the two? Like, if it's probably not obvious when you're in the midst of it.
Yeah, and that is a really interesting question, because my answer would be to do the work and to do more work and constantly just kind of do the things that are at the front of your that you can think of right in that moment, and build those things, and then sort of sit back and reflect. Because it's really sometimes, as a builder, as an object builder, I've always been an object builder, I tend to build and just kind of go ahead. And then as things move, meaning sort of gets pushed into the things. And I began to see the meaning sort of arise out of just the sheer labor. Sometimes it is very evident, and sometimes I do have a sort of a goal and plan, but other times, literally, it just arises as I work, because I've now, being on the other side of this kind of thing, I have a passion and I have a goal, and things are built from that. And so I'm pulling it from there, and I'm not necessarily looking at my individual works. And so for me, it really was trying to find that thing that I cared that much about. and really sort of, and in my situation, it's part of me, you know, and so it's really part of who I am.
Thank you.
Yep.
It was excellent.
Thank you.
All right.